It was a serene afternoon in the tranquil town of Brookstone Hills, where the sun gently illuminated the tree-lined streets, casting soft shadows on the well-maintained lawns. The quiet hum of suburban life enveloped the area as Ann Walker, a mother of two, drove her minivan down the familiar roads. Her 7-year-old daughter Ava was seated in the back, chatting animatedly about her day at school. Anne listened with a smile, cherishing these peaceful moments with her child after a busy day at work. Anne, a 35-year-old marketing executive, had just wrapped up a meeting and was eager to get home to spend time with her family. Her husband, Derek, had been working long hours as an undercover agent with a federal task force. Their family life had been a delicate balance between love, sacrifice, and understanding. Derek's job often meant late nights and high-risk assignments, but Anne had always admired his dedication to keeping the streets safe. Little did Anne know, today would be far from ordinary. As Anne cruised down the street, a police patrol car suddenly appeared behind her, its flashing lights cutting through the calm atmosphere. Confused, Anne glanced at her speedometer. It was normal, and she hadn't passed any stop signs. Still, she knew the drill. She pulled over to the curb, taking a deep breath and maintaining composure for Ava's sake. Meanwhile, Derek, who had wrapped up an operation early that day, was on his way home. He had been stuck in traffic and had no idea that his wife had already been stopped by a police officer. As he turned the corner a few blocks away, he saw Anne's car pulled over, a police cruiser parked behind it. At first, he thought it was just another routine stop, but something in his gut told him it was more than that. The officer, a middle-aged man named Officer Greg Matthews, slowly approached Anne's car with a hardened expression. He eyed Anne suspiciously, not out of professional concern, but a gut feeling of superiority. His posture was rigid, and his gaze lingered on Anne a little too long. He looked at the minivan, at Anne, and then at the car seat in the back, where Ava sat quietly, unaware of the tension that was building. "Good afternoon, ma'am," Officer Matthews said in a clipped tone. "Do you know why I pulled you over?" Anne was calm, but her voice carried an undertone of concern. "I'm not sure, officer. I wasn't speeding, and I didn't run any stop signs. Is there an issue with the car?" The officer didn't answer her question directly. Instead, he just demanded, "License and registration." Anne handed over the papers, still trying to keep her composure. She glanced nervously at Ava in the back seat, who was looking at the officer with wide eyes. The officer took the papers without a word, his expression hardening further. "Your rear brake light is out," he said sharply, without even inspecting the car. Anne, taken aback, knew the light was working perfectly. She had just had the car checked at the mechanic earlier that week. "I don't think that's correct, officer," Anne said, keeping her tone even. "My husband had the car serviced recently. The brake light is fine." But Matthews wasn't having it. He crossed his arms, leaning in closer to her window, invading her space. "You're lying. You people always try to get away with stuff." The words stung like a slap. Anne's heart raced, but she stayed calm, remembering the many times she had had to navigate these types of situations. However, today was different. Ava's innocent face, peeking through the rearview mirror, made the situation even more intense. From a distance, Derek had slowed down his car as soon as he saw the police lights. His instincts kicked in. He wasn't sure what was happening, but something didn't feel right. As an undercover federal agent, Derek knew the importance of keeping a low profile. But this was his family, and he couldn't just stand by. He parked his car a little farther down the road, still out of sight, but close enough to intervene if things got out of hand. Anne, still trying to reason with the officer, felt the situation escalate. She kept her hands visible on the steering wheel and glanced over at Ava, who was now silent, watching the unfolding drama. Her mind raced. What was happening? Why was the officer treating her like this? The officer didn't seem to care about her explanation. Instead, he snapped, "Step out of the vehicle, now!" Anne's heart raced as the officer continued his aggressive approach. The tension in the air was palpable, and she could feel her pulse quicken with each step he took toward her vehicle. She had been through countless traffic stops before, but none had felt quite like this one. She was trying to keep calm for her young son in the back seat, but her instincts told her something was terribly wrong. The officer, a middle-aged white man with an air of entitlement, leaned in too close to her window. His eyes scanned her from head to toe, sizing her up in a way that made Anne feel like she was somehow guilty of something, even though she had done nothing wrong. "License and registration," he barked, his tone sharp and devoid of any professionalism. Anne handed over the papers, her fingers trembling slightly, but her voice remained steady. "Can you please explain why I'm being pulled over?" she asked politely, hoping for a simple explanation. But instead of responding, the officer's gaze shifted to the back seat, where her young son sat, wide-eyed and confused. His eyes narrowed as if Anne was somehow a threat. The officer's body language was a clear signal of something more personal. This wasn't just a routine stop. It was an opportunity for him to assert control. "Broken taillight," he muttered, his words full of disdain. Anne's heart sank. She knew her car had been checked recently, and there was no issue with the taillight. She couldn't help but feel that this was just an excuse, an arbitrary reason to stop her. "I had the car checked last week. There's no issue with the taillight," Anne said, her calm demeanor betraying the storm inside her. But the officer wasn't listening. He stepped back, assessing her once again, his posture becoming more rigid. "Don't get smart with me, ma'am," he sneered. "You people always have excuses." The words stung, a blow worse than any physical strike could be. She had been ready for anything, except this. Racial profiling was a constant in her life, but being confronted with it so directly, in front of her child, was unbearable. Anne's son, still in the back seat, had started to sense the growing tension. His small voice broke the silence, a question that would haunt Anne for years to come. "Mommy, why is he yelling at you?" Anne swallowed hard, fighting back the tears that threatened to come. She turned back to the officer, her gaze steely now. "I don't think you need to escalate this, officer. I'm not resisting. I'm just trying to keep things calm here." But the officer wasn't hearing any of it. His hand hovered dangerously close to his weapon, and Anne knew, with an aching certainty, that this wasn't just going to be a simple ticket. The fear surged in her chest, but she held firm. She wasn't going to let this man's prejudice control her. At that moment, just a few blocks away, her husband, Derek, an undercover FBI agent, noticed the police lights flashing in his rearview mirror. He immediately recognized Anne's car and the officer's presence. Something about this situation felt wrong, and Derek's instincts as a law enforcement officer told him to keep his distance, but be ready to step in if things took a turn for the worse. As Derek slowly pulled over, still watching from a distance, the officer's aggression intensified. He raised his voice, demanding Anne step out of the vehicle. Anne tried to reason with him, her voice calm but firm. "Officer, my son is in the back seat. Can we please keep this civil? What's the point of escalating this?" But the officer wasn't having it. His authority was being questioned, and he wasn't going to tolerate it. "Step out of the car now," he repeated, his hand brushing the edge of his holster. Anne could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her. She could see Derek in the distance, his car just behind the officer's patrol vehicle. She knew that he would intervene soon, but until then, she had to hold her ground. Just as she was about to step out of the car, the officer lunged forward, his fist connecting with her face in a brutal, unexpected punch. The force of the strike knocked Anne off balance, sending her tumbling to the ground, clutching her swollen cheek in pain. "Mommy," her son cried, the terror in his voice slicing through the air. Anne's vision blurred as she lay on the ground, trying to focus. The pain in her face was excruciating, but what hurt more was the realization that this officer had just assaulted her in front of her child. Derek, now realizing that things had escalated beyond control, threw open his car door and sprinted toward the scene, his badge already in hand. The officer hadn't realized that he was about to confront the husband of the woman he had just assaulted, the very person who could expose him for his abuse of power. As Derek approached the scene, his heart pounded with adrenaline, each step bringing him closer to his wife and child. He could see Anne, sprawled on the ground, clutching her face in agony, her son trembling in the back seat of the car. The officer stood over her, his face twisted in anger, but also uncertainty, as he realized he might have crossed a line. Derek's instincts as an FBI agent kicked in. He had seen this kind of misconduct before, but never on his own family. His mind raced with the urgency of the situation. He had to act quickly, but calmly. The stakes were higher now, and there was no room for hesitation. The officer, still in shock over what he had just done, didn't notice Derek approaching until he was just a few feet away. His first instinct was to protect his family, but as an FBI agent, Derek knew how to handle a volatile situation. He took a deep breath and reached for his badge, holding it up to the officer. "Get away from her," Derek commanded, his voice sharp and full of authority. The officer froze, his body stiffening as he turned to face Derek. His eyes widened in recognition. The badge. The realization hit him like a ton of bricks. He had just assaulted the wife of an FBI agent. The power dynamic that had been so skewed in his favor moments ago had flipped entirely. Derek didn't wait for the officer to respond. "You assaulted my wife in front of our child. You need to step back now," he continued, his tone unwavering. The officer took a step back, his arrogance replaced by fear. He looked like a man who had just realized the gravity of his mistake. His voice faltered as he stammered, "I didn't know. I thought she was resisting. You didn't know?" Derek interrupted, his voice a dangerous whisper. "You didn't think to ask who she was? You didn't think to treat her with respect no matter who she was?" The officer was at a loss for words. His excuses crumbled in the face of Derek's calm yet seething fury. The situation had escalated beyond his control. The bystanders, some of whom had been recording the entire exchange, now murmured amongst themselves. The video footage of the officer's aggression was already circulating online, and it wouldn't be long before it went viral. Derek knelt beside Anne, gently lifting her up and checking her face for injury. "Are you okay?" he whispered softly, trying to soothe her despite his anger. Anne nodded weakly, her face swollen and bruised from the punch, but her eyes met his with a mix of relief and gratitude. Their son, still in the car, had stopped crying, but the terror was still evident in his wide eyes. Anne reached out for Derek, feeling the strength of his presence beside her. "I'm here now," Derek said, his voice steady, but his eyes burning with the desire for justice. As the officer stood helplessly, Derek turned his attention back to him, his voice icy. "You'll regret this. You're going to pay for what you did." As Derek stood over the officer, his fury barely contained, the sound of sirens grew louder in the distance. Backup was on its way, but the damage had already been done. The officer's arrogance had led to his downfall, and now, in front of a crowd of witnesses, he was facing the consequences of his actions. Derek's voice remained calm but firm as he addressed the officer once more. "You've made a grave mistake. Not only did you assault my wife, but you've abused your authority, and now you will face the full consequences. You're going to regret this." The officer, his face drained of color, knew there was no turning back. His colleagues arrived on the scene, their faces full of disbelief as they assessed the situation. They had already seen the viral footage of the assault, and it was clear the officer was in trouble. Derek, still standing tall, continued to assert control of the situation. "I'm an FBI agent, and this situation won't be covered up. This officer needs to be held accountable." The growing crowd murmured in agreement, some recording every moment, while others stood in silence, horrified by what they had just witnessed. The officer's career was in ruins. His actions, captured on video and shared across social media, had already spread like wildfire. The public was outraged, and the pressure for justice grew stronger with every passing minute. What do you think about the officer's actions in this situation? Do you believe justice was served, or should there have been more accountability? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. If you believe in standing up against injustice, hit that like button, share this video with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories of truth and justice. Let's keep the conversation going and make sure everyone's voice is heard. World Map Sparkles.